we lose our humanness, we lose our capacity to be ourselves. So really what I want to do today is show you what I would do if I was in the average salesperson's position to regain that autonomy and regain that control and have meaningful conversations or better conversations. Okay, so like I said, I'm not going to try and steal my thunder here, so I'll just riff it out to you without saying too much more. So the aim of my webinar today is to explain how you can build a pragmatic system that will allow you to understand your prospects to a deeper level and build a process that means as you step onto calls, you're able to have a more natural conversation that are appropriate to the prospect's awareness, readiness, qualification level, need, buyer profile, as well as understand what to focus on in discovery and have much more natural flowing conversations. All right. So what I'm saying is, and I always use the analogy, best rugby team in the world, All Blacks. All right. They look like they're throwing a ball around. But do you think that they just do that? They turn up for the match, or do you think they put the prep in, the excellence in behind the scenes? So what I'm saying is like this, I'm going to show you what the excellence behind the scenes looks like. So that when you get onto your sales calls, you're just like the All Blacks playing, and you're throwing the ball and making it look effortless, or having these conversations look effortless because you've done the groundwork. All right. So we need more than a page of questions to have an effective sales call. Okay. That's hit and hope. Okay. And I'm sure we've all been there in our evolution. So I'm going to show you how to get ahead of the game and make selling easier. There's a lot of slides, guys. So I'm going to ramp up the volume a little bit now, or the speed. Okay. And what you can do, guys, is put questions in the box or write them down, and I'll be more than happy to answer them at the end. Okay. Okay, so in this webinar, we'll be taking a deeper dive into the variables that need to be considered to make the prospects in front of us unique, or what are the variables that make the prospect unique? Because once we understand them, we have a refreshing conversation on the things that matter to them and focus on the things that will make the sale happen. Once we've done that, with this deeper understanding, I'll show you how to overhaul the sales process. And I will be showing you a live case study of literally a client that I'm working with now, who's gone from being hitting himself against a brick wall to actually using this. And one of the testimonies, or actually I put a post up earlier, or this morning, he's like, I just did this matrix and I just sold this lady, and she was really low on the grading scale, but like, it's like, bloody hell, this thing works. All right. So what are the 6 parts of the webinar? Part 1, the 6 variables to understand your prospect. Part 2, the 6 qualification criteria. Part 3, the 4 different types of buyers from my perspective. Part 4, what is a sensible process? Okay, and how do we customize it for each buyer type? And then how we can pull it all together with a live case study. And then I want to touch on how to sell using a framework rather than a script, so that we've done all this work to understand the prospect. We've got a sales process that we know that works. Let's use a framework rather than a script, so we get that fluidity. So the case study I'm going to be referring to, it was a rep who went from having confusing sales calls to having productive and effective, meaningful calls by assessing the prospect, qualifying them, and applying the discovery process that was most effective to them. So the case study in question is a business scaling offer that teaches healthcare professionals and businesses in the healthcare sector to introduce systems to allow them to scale and optimize as a business scaling offer. Okay, mainly taking them online from bricks and mortar and sort of things. Okay, so the 6 things we need to understand a prospect. And this may be teaching you to suck eggs, but there could be some like hidden gold if you kind of know the subject anyway. But we want to know what avatar they are. And an avatar is a segment of the total number of people attracted to your offer. Each avatar type will have a need or needs that make them distinctive from another avatar. Your offer, your program, product, or service will solve a need for a prospect, or should do. Okay, these could be physical or emotional, and a great tool for identifying what these are is the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Guys, this is so useful in order to ask yourself, what needs does the prospect have that I solve? All right, so we got right down the bottom, like if you sell Snickers bars, then it's physiological needs, yeah? Air, water, food, shelter. It goes up personal security, safety needs, love, belonging, esteem, and then self-actualization. I'll not go too heavy into them. You can get copies of the slides, guys, at the end anyway, if you wish. Okay, so we have needs that range from pressing physiological needs up to lifetime orientated desires around mastery and excellence, if you can imagine the Maslow scale. So consider where our offer fits within the hierarchy and think outside the box, as many solutions can fulfill needs on more than one level on the hierarchy, all right? So consider the example of teaching somebody how to become a day trader, how to do Forex trading, wherever it may be. If they become successful at it, they can buy food, buy a bigger house, get a trophy wife, buy the Rolex, and then maybe open an orphanage in Rwanda. This offer would service all levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So when you do working out who your avatars are, really think outside the box in terms of logical, emotional needs, and then use Maslow's scale, and then you get a really good picture of what your prospect or your prospect sets avatars look like. Okay, so do you solve physical or emotional needs, or both? So as a rule of thumb, and it'll be discussed later, emotional needs are solved on things like health offers, relationship offers, and then the prospect coming to the call will be coming from like a right brain, from having like we're dealing with emotions. Again, a heavier emphasis can be placed on the problem phase, which we discuss later. Whilst physical needs, they can carry emotion, but we're really looking at prioritizing, gathering empirical metrics such as money, convenience, time saved. They're of greater importance. So emotional needs, we're focusing on pain and pleasure, and then on more logical needs, okay, we're focusing on metrics, which we'll be going into in more detail as we go along, if it's a little bit confusing at the moment. Okay, so what are the variables that your problem could solve? The variables that your offer solves, not problem solves. Okay, first one is time. Okay, so think to yourself, I got my avatar now. What are the things my my avatars are experiencing, so that I can start to create this profile of my different avatars? So as they say, money is the enemy of the poor, time is the enemy of the rich. The more wealth you have, the more often you need to service it. And you have the luxury to enjoy to find things in life. So you want more time away from managing wealth so you can do that. Time is also a major limiter in trying to achieve life balance. In the Western world societies, there's a constant need to pay for things that support our lifestyle, whilst at the same time trying to navigate family life and actual having a life. So does your offer give somebody their time back? Does it offer the possibility of creating more money? So money, as we guys know, is the gatekeeper to a lot of physical or emotional needs getting resolved. It allows what I call open loops of the mind or needs to be closed by allowing the prospect to purchase a solution. So just for clarity, what I mean by an open loop is a need is an unfulfilled need. It's a nagging in the head, in the mind. So people may say that they want a certain financial outcome, or I want to make 10K. So when you maybe went in for sales coaching, I want to achieve this revenue goal. Yes, you did, but if it was for personal reasons, you would do it was what that amount of about that money would actually give you. Okay, so what's important about the actual revenue that your offer, your solution can provide for a prospect, and unpack it, because then you're going to get to the real meaning behind why they want your product, program, or service. Also, it's worth considering in the realm of money is that people have a financial threshold that allows them to feel safe. Not having money for an emergency or rainy day can cause a pervasive sense of stress. So what else will we be considering problems solved by offers is stress. Stress is a dissonance in the life of the prospect. They may wish life was working out one way, but it's actually misaligns with that desire. This dissonance is the motivator that is behind, at least in part, to them looking to close the open loop in their mind. Okay, so do you reduce stress in some way? Okay, I know Todd does with their mornings. All right. So next one I want to consider is freedom. Okay, I classify freedom as freedom from and freedom to. And this will align with what I'm going to be discussing later with my analogy when considering high-level personality types. In that your prospects are on a conveyor belt. And right in the middle of the conveyor belt, the conveyor pushes to the left and pushes to the right. Okay, a prospect that's on the left conveyor belt is moving towards the flames. A prospect who's moving towards the right is moving towards the clouds and heaven. Okay, so do you offer freedom from the flames, or do you offer freedom to achieve closer to get to the clouds? Okay, your offer could offer clarity. People with a health problem or a business problem, for example, are desperately searching for clarity. How can this be resolved? That's a big part of what I do. People give me their calls. I'm like, do this, and then you'll get better close rates. Okay, so this is a perfect demonstration of how a loop concept, i.e. an open nagging need, does your offer deliver a solution or clarity as to how the prospect can resolve it? Okay, and probability that it'll get the job done. So this works in home improvement a lot. If there's multiple vendors in place, the prospect will often be looking for the vendor that stands the best chance of delivering the result. This is why referrals are such a good lead source, as there is proof from a trusted source that you are the one that is going to get the job done. And people will pay extra when they believe that they are working with the person to get the job done right. Okay, so a lot of these variables, guys, you want to be thinking about the psychology that's going through the mind of the prospect, because these are real. Yeah, these are things that prospects are thinking about, but they don't consciously think of them. They don't understand, I want this money because, unless they've done a lot of work on themselves like us guys have, but they won't know, like, oh, I really want to work with, Todd's Sunsetter because I've seen so much branding and I know that Fred down the road had his done with him and it got the job done. Or they're a little bit expensive, but that doesn't matter because they're going to get the job done. All right, so these are what's happening in the prospect's head. I'm sure you're aware. And it's building up this profile, which is going to allow you to think, right, I know what's making this prospect tick. I'm going to have a better conversation, and I know what they mean when they say that. Because I don't know if I probably haven't told anyone this before, but the closer's radar, that's where it comes from. Because when I wrote my first book, I realized that the best sales rep have got a closer's radar. They can interpret what people are saying because they got the sixth sense. And the sixth sense comes from experience. But what I'm saying here is you can expedite your experience by really doing the groundwork beforehand and understanding your prospects and understanding what the position they're in and what they're experiencing in terms of pain and what's showing up for them in their lives. And you can have far better conversations. Okay, so what else would be a consideration with the prospect is life chapters. Okay, so I think this is Erickson talks about this, whereas like different life chapters are going to have different priorities. When we're in our 20s to 35s, okay, a long time ago for me, probably a few of you guys as well, yeah, thinking back with rose tilted glasses, we're generally more free of responsibility, more focused on obtaining our own personal benefit and satisfaction. 30, 35, okay, we're in a more serious relationship generally. We've got the family, the golden retriever, looking for stability, looking to build a financial wall, things of that nature. 55 plus, okay, they're somewhat slowing down. We've developed wealth, we're looking to maximize it, protect it, give it to the next generation. And we're really looking for comfort, stability, longevity, and that sort of thing. So in the context of your different offers, so say, for example, like Gurkaran, who's in fitness, so like he might have somebody who's in their 20s who wants to optimize their health, but have somebody in their 30s who wants to stay more virile, or somebody's in their 50s who doesn't want to get bad joints and wants to live longer, not get diabetes, that sort of thing. All right. Okay, so I just want to stress that these are generalized, but I think they're a useful tool. So let's consider the example of a dating offer. Okay, there would be the three distinct phases. Somebody in their 20s maybe looking for like dating. Mid-stage, 30, 50, 20, 35, maybe looking to start a family with somebody. In the older crowd, maybe they're divorcees or whatever, but they've been through all that stuff. They've had their kids, they're grown up and all that good stuff. They may be looking for more companionship. Okay, they're still attracted to the dating offer, but they're looking for different things. So I want you to consider that amongst the other things that we offer in terms of the tangibles that we talked about, the time, relieving stress. Now we're talking about the age, we're considering our avatars. Okay, so the case study, the business offer, because I want to draw this in and make it true to life now. So what did it look like when I was working with this client, and how did we create the avatars and sub-avatars? So what we decided was there's going to be traditional therapists and there's going to be alternative therapists. That's a significant distinction to have different types of conversations. And then the sub-avatars for the traditional ones are the ones which were working in a hospital, maybe making a transition. They're looking to create a side hustle. The practice owners looking to scale, or maybe practice owners looking to go online. Whereas an alternative might be a home operator, Reiki, that sort of thing. Or they might do some sort of, other alternative therapy and they're looking to go more online. So as you can see already, we're going to be having different conversations with Mary, who's got as a home operator who does Reiki, with Fred, who's a practice owner, chiropractor with a team of 6 underneath him. They're completely different conversations, and we're far more empowered already to have better conversations. So nextly, I want to touch on is buyer awareness. So we've talked about avatars and the different variables that we can do to build up a picture of them. Buyer awareness, guys, I cannot stress how important this is. I was having a conversation with a rep yesterday working with a very big organization, and his sales manager said, as soon as somebody buys a tripwire, which is like 50, $100, you sell them onto a 10K package. It's like, whoa, Nelly. And he wonders why, what's wrong with me? And as a rep does, they say, oh, look, what am I doing wrong? Okay, because basically the sales manager doesn't understand these nuances. So buyer awareness, problem aware. The prospect is experiencing a problem in their life or business, etc. And you can solve it, but they don't have a clear understanding of how they can get it solved yet. So if we think about the person who needs sales training, they know that they've got a terrible close rate. Solution awareness. Okay, the prospect has in some way researched the solution, has to some degree established some level of awareness as what the solution could look like. So somebody's gone online and they said, oh, I didn't know you could actually get like sales training with role plays and one-to-ones and online and things like that. That's brilliant. The next thing is brand awareness. So the prospect has formed a belief that the domain in which you exist, say for example me as a sales coach, will provide the answer, and now they're shopping around. They're looking for the right thing to go with. So what I'm trying to say with that example of that sales rep I was talking about is that prospect that is expected to cough up 10 grand is probably very low in solution awareness. He's nowhere near brand awareness yet. And bang, there's a complete mismatch, because why would you spend that much money on something that you really don't understand, or you don't know is going to be what you need as a solution? Hope this is making sense. So now what we can see is like this is an actual process, by the way, that's going to lead to a very empowering script. So we've decided what the different avatar types, the sub-avatars, and now we can decide through the questioning that we ask each avatar then, how problem aware, solution aware, or brand aware they were. Okay, what have you done about solving this? How long have you had this problem? Yeah. Have you been looking at other vendors? You can see now how these very common sales questions, they have a very, useful imperative really. Because once we understand, if we're trying to close somebody, for want of a better word, who's even problem aware, oh, I just saw an ad. What are you looking for? I really don't know. I know that my business isn't working, and I don't know whether it's sales or marketing or whether it's like signage I got. Well, are they going to close? I very much doubt it, because they're not solution aware. They're certainly not brand aware. And this goes hand in glove with buyer awareness. Know, like, and trust. It's the amount of exposure that the prospect has been had, so that they can know that your solution is credible, reliable, trustworthy, etc. So as humans, we're very wary creatures, because that's how we've evolved over thousands of years. We need to get used to something, and the more we experience it, the awareness reduces, and we create a more solid meaning of it in our minds. We become more trustworthy of it, or becomes more trustworthy in our minds. So nowadays, obviously, this is done through marketing, be it like billboards, posting and things like that. Okay, and the amount of exposure will indicate how indoctrinated a prospect will be. So what are the considerations that we might be asking a prospect? Like frequency. Have you been following Jimmy for long? Have you been like what have you seen about Sunset? Or the pills, the solutions that Gurkhan sells. Like, how long have you been following XYZ influencer selling the health products? Recency. This was massive for me in fitness. If I could get hold of somebody just after they saw an ad, I had a much higher chance of closing them. Okay, and duration. How long have they been following them? How many ads, or how much content? How recent, and how long? Again, if you think about it, if somebody ticks all the boxes to all of these, they're going to be a completely different prospect to somebody who's just tripped over themselves, accidentally clicked on your ad and managed to get their details in somehow, and they don't even know why they're on the call. Yeah? Because here's the thing, guys, as sales reps, we're expected to close everything in sight by the influencer or by our management, yeah? And then until we know this stuff, we take onus on ourselves. Oh, why didn't I close that? But if we've got asked these questions and realize like they're nowhere near even realizing what a solution could look like yet, they need to be nurtured more, then it keeps the stress off us and it keeps the heat off us as well. Because we can say, look, guys, this is the process I run. I've identified what avatar they are. They're still very much just coming out of problem awareness, and they've only just found out about us. So would you really buy and spend the ticket price that we have on something? And they're going to be, they can't really, argue with you on that because you're empowered with this knowledge. Okay, so let's see how this is panning out. We know the avatar, the sub-avatar. We know if they're problem aware, and we know if they've achieved a high level of indoctrination. Now, we're beginning to form a real beautiful picture of the people who we want to pitch as soon as possible, the people we think need more nurturing, need to get to know us a little bit better, need to develop trust, which is sadly lacking in the industry. Okay, so that we can, have the right level of conversation and not strong arm people. Because I don't know if it was the same for you guys, but when I started out, it was all about reframe, reframe, reframe. And I was like, and to be, put my hands up to it, closes radars full of reframes. But the thing is, you try reframing somebody who is completely is in problem awareness and there's no like and trust. If you do get them over the line, they're probably going to default and look for a refund and have a bad taste in their mouth because you forced them into a sale with a lot of hard closing because they weren't ready. Okay, so we can avoid that stuff and be ethical sellers. State of readiness. Okay, so again now guys, these are really important concepts and you can really get like a pinpoint understanding of what where your prospect is sitting, because this is different for different offers. Okay, but there's logical mental components to the state of readiness that enmesh into complete pictures to how practically ready a prospect is to embark on your opportunity. Okay, so let's see what the case study, what we pulled up for this type of offer. So if we look on the right there, have they got a mental vision of what they want? So the hybrid practice owner, can they say, yeah, I want to be completely online, I want to shut down my bricks and mortar, and I want to do it in 2 years? Yeah, if they've got that vision, great. Let's move them along the line. Have they got the bandwidth of time? Are they just like literally doing like 10 appointments a day and they could never even dream of taking on a coaching mentorship right now because they're just absolutely super glued to their business? Are they financially qualified? And are they educated as to the possibilities? So what we meant in this circumstances is a chiropractor might not realize that not only do they work on people's physicality, but they also work on things like gut health. So if they're educated to the extent that I could launch something online which really works around gut health, which is very important, with that education, it might empower them to become more ready, improve their state of readiness. Okay, so now guys, you can see that there's such a dynamic here where Mary, who's a home operator, problem aware, never seen you before, she's no idea what she's looking for, and she's only got $500 in her account. It's a completely different animal. The Fred, who's a practice owner, making 7 figures, knows exactly what his problem is, has been following you for the last 2 years, has a vision of where he wants to go. He's not tied to the business anymore. He's got disposable cash, and he's researched the types of therapies that he can do online, like completely different opposite ends of the scale. Yeah. So I know it's a kind of brazen example, but I hope you can see the picture. So I want to discuss urgency. If we refer back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs and consider the different types of needs, okay, we can see that the longer the need has been unattended to, the greater the level of urgency. You don't have water for an hour, it's okay. You don't have it for a day, you're beginning to sweat it out a little bit, or try not to sweat because you're conserving it. But so that the time and need being remains unfilled is a variable in urgency, but so is the inconvenience that the problem causes. Okay, which is likely to increase over time anyway. So think to yourself, like, what's the solution you offer, and how essential is it to survival? How much of a thorn in the side of the prospect, a thorn in the side of the prospect is it for this unique prospect? Great. And then with urgency, obviously, then the more inclined they are to buy. So what are the urgency factors as you can see this evolution develop? Okay, they can't scale. They're tied up with insurance jobs, which are keeping their revenue down. They're trading time for money, which means they never get quality of time outside of work. They're tied to the business, like I used to be with my gyms. I'd be in the gym 7 days a week. Like you just burn out. You're doing wages on a Saturday and Sunday, you're tidying up ready for Monday. It's like, what's this all about? Yeah, hobby becomes business and you fall out of love with it. Well, I can't leave a legacy. Okay, once I go, I don't have anything to give. I want to create a structure, a business that I can give my kids, I can give to whatever their high level need may be. Okay. Okay, so I want to consider resistance as well, because I really went down the rabbit hole here. And we've got needs, we've got resistance as well. We've got people who may be burnt. Okay, so a major part, as we become more online guys, AI and things like that, like the possibility of scamming is going to be ridiculous as time goes on, right? So in a world of scam, false promises, funnel fatigue, somebody might be desperate to fulfill on a need, yet they've been burnt. They've dropped 10, 20, 30 grand on stuff and just been robbed. Okay, so we need to understand this dynamic because it's going to be pivotal when we think about our objection handling as to like, I thought you said you wanted to do it and now you're backing away. Like, what's going on here? So you ask yourself, like, what is the dynamic going on in the head of the prospect? Like, I understand this avatar. They've got a big state of urgency. They know they've been following me for ages. They're ready to drop, yet they're not signing on the line. Why? So just think about that. Just think what resistance is there? Maybe in your funnel, maybe in your industry, conflict between what they've heard on the sales call and marketing that has made them think, oh, you know what I mean? Because they're so they're so fatigued or so burnt that it doesn't take much for them to just go, well, I sense something's not right here, which I've just explained here. So that's fine. Okay, so take a little breather there, guys. Let's take a little bit of time to answer questions. Okay, got to go looking for the replay. Okay, got it. Guys, is this making sense so far? You can say no, it's terrible, Jimmy. Sort your life out if you want.
It is. It is.
Anyone got any feedback so far? Is it useful at all?
Yeah, I have a question, Jimmy. So when you're talking about the different buyer awareness levels, should we can we think of them as like levels in that regard where like if somebody is not problem aware, they obviously will not be brand aware, right? Because they don't even know what problem they have. And should we, in our discovery calls and even in our in-person meetings, if we have those, we should be kind of asking questions that are qualifying where they're at in that hierarchy of whether they're problem aware, solution aware, or brand aware, and then addressing accordingly.
Exactly. So that's a great question, Todd. Thanks for adding that. So what I'll be showing you is a framework whereby you can run through a prospect assessment, which you just talked about there, and then you can ask yourself how qualified they are, And then you can decide whether you want to do the discovery and go for a close, or whether you want to do a certain amount of discovery and then just do a two-step rather than go for the close. It's stuff that we kind of, the more experience you get in sales, you're probably doing it anyway. If you've got the bandwidth to do it, if you've got permission to do it, like you have, Todd, in your own business, by saying this person's not ready, they need to get like a bit more marketing digested first to up like the know, like, and trust, to get the solution awareness down to brand awareness and things like that. Yeah, so that's a great question. But I will be showing you that in a second. Okay, so the qualification criteria, guys, between the marketing and the main sales discovery element, there's a need to qualify our prospects to make sure that the right fit here and now for our offer. They need to have a need, desire to change, even if they sabotage themselves. They need to be free of logistical blockers, have time and financial resources in order to avail themselves of our services. Let's look at these in a bit more detail. So need. Okay, so talk about this open loop, something nagging. Your solution either fully or partially closes this open loop. If a prospect's found their way into your ecosystem, they have got a need here and now, they're not qualified. Okay, which does happen a lot. Desire, just because somebody has a need doesn't mean that they have a desire to change. There's a lot of people stuck in their own way, the status quo bias, which we all know about. But the thing is, the cost of the solution might be too expensive for what their resources are, or the inconvenience of change might be for so much people. Like Gurkaran on his health offer, it's like people just know in their heart of hearts that I know you're probably going to end up dying of diabetes, but you know what? I just love them candy bars. And like they'll not tell you straight on the phone, but you can just tell by the things they say and the contradictory language that they use that deep down the desire is not strong enough. Yes, there's ways that we can leverage that with sales modalities in the moment. Okay, but I think it's a useful thing to consider that if somebody's not going to desire to change, then that doesn't make them qualified. And if we say, like, why is this so important to you now? And if they're huffing and puffing and spluttering and they can't answer it with sincerity, probably means that they haven't got a strong desire. So I'm sure, like, I can think of calls I reviewed this week, and some people's desire just doesn't match the expenditure and price. And that's not saying, oh, I'm not going to pitch them because the desire is not strong. I don't mean that. But if you're to be purely analytical, and they can't tell you why it's important to you now, they haven't got time frames, they haven't got really meaningful reasons to change, their desire just might not be there. Okay, time. Multitude of reasons is generally logical reasons, not kicking can down the road reasons. They might be not have the funding right now, tied up in some endeavor. Like you find that with a lot of business projects. It's just not feasible to embark on another project now. Like somebody might be pregnant. Okay, those are reasons, those are qualification reasons, not smokescreen reasons like I don't have the time. Like to embark on something which takes 3 hours a week of learning, yet they're on social media for 8 hours. Okay. And then time to dedicate is they just don't have the physical time to implement your offer. So it might be like some sort of business offer and somebody's in the middle of tax season. Those are logical reasons why timing the time is not right for them to embark on your product or service. Decision maker. The prospect might be a good fit, but either doesn't have the authority to make the decision to move forward, or there's a need for another person to green light it. That is just the decision-making process of some businesses, guys. And this is the step up if you start selling biz op and then you go up the chain to selling more complex offers or B2B offers, you'll find that this is a completely different world where you're not asking the partner anymore. There is actually a hierarchical structure of understanding what that is in order for a deal to move forward. And I think this is fairly obvious for you guys, is that's not to be confused with smokescreen. I need to ask somebody who's not required actually as a way of me to subjugate in authority to somebody else, so I don't have to make a critical decision in my own life. All right, which I'm sure is the bugbear of everybody in this room. Okay, finances. Somebody that needs to be able to afford your product or service using their own capital or leveraging others. Okay, it doesn't have to be. It can be done on terms that agree with you, but are mutually agreeable. But that it shouldn't be the logical and actual financial qualification should be considered with somebody who doesn't want to spend the money because they're fearful they might fail. That's a mindset issue. Okay, so how does that relate to the offer, the case study? I know you can't see it here, but all this this is emerging now, and I hope you're seeing it. I hope you're not thinking, "Oh, Jimmy, you're just you should have just been like a system analyst in a former life or something like that." And you're seeing it that I'm trying to create something beautiful. But these red boxes here, these are the qualifications. I know you can't read them because the print didn't come out too well. But just by asking these questions when you're creating the profile, just naturally you're qualifying them with things like finances, need, desire anyway. And for those other 6 qualifying criteria that you miss, before you go into the discovery and waste your time with somebody, on the right-hand side, I don't know if you can see my cursor, it's strongly advisable that you qualify them on these criteria before you take them into discovery. So what have we covered so far? We've created an avatar assessment. We understand to a deep level where they are, what their needs are, urgency, resistance, what their state of readiness, know, like, and trust, what their key drivers are, considering what sub-avatar they are. We've got like this beautiful picture, and now we're onto a place, well, are they in a space that they can buy what we've got? Notice how this is far different to just turning up onto a call and then just like starting asking a boatload of situation questions and think to yourself, who the hell am I dealing with here? It's a completely different system. 4 different buyer types. Now I talked about the horizontal line, the horizontal conveyor belt. It parts in the middle. To the right of the conveyor belt, people are moving towards heaven. To the left, people are going towards hell. That's what I want you to think of as this analogy. And at the midpoint, people are flipping over and they move once they get enough abundance to moving towards pleasure and not trying to fight off and run away from pain anymore. All right. So what I want to do is the 4 different types of prospects, because what we're going to be discussing now is how we sell to different prospects. Needy types. They're right at the edge. They're on the left-hand conveyor. They're near the flames. Okay, they're more desperate, prepared to make less rational decisions, open to manipulation. Whilst willful people, they're further up the conveyor. They've left the left-hand conveyor behind. Okay, so they're more desire-driven. They can see that they're still chasing. Their legs are still going underneath them, but they're looking forward now. But they're not out of the woods yet. They don't want to go back to the flames, but so they're not there with the needy prospects. They're not operating from a place of lack. They're operating from a place of desire. Business types. Okay, so these are on the other side of the conveyor belt. They have more wealth security, focusing more on developing more wealth security, stability for themselves, family, and business. Stronger self-esteem because they've had business success, and that they have a greater sense of patience because they know there's different opportunities out there and they can be more choosy. Okay, they're more considerate when making decisions, less rash, less open to influence. Sales tricks will turn them off generally if they're very overt. If they're buying for a business, they're likely to be operating from an acquisition procedure. Okay, so you'll need to understand that. And what you're essentially going to sell them on, guys, is more metrics. Where they are now and what metrics make their current process or situation not optimal, and where they want to be to have an optimal process and what the metrics surrounded them there are at that stage. And that's how generally we'll sell them, which I'll get to in a minute. And then investor types, which have come across a lot of. Okay, they've got an established portfolio of wealth, they're successful. If they're employed, they're in upper management. They've often got their own business or serial entrepreneurs. The problems are more tied around things like time poverty. And essentially what that's doing is preventing them from doing what they love in life, which is creating businesses, scaling businesses, using their wealth for things. And they're kind of tied into business ventures, things of that nature. Okay, they're savvy. They're used to having high-level conversations around money, business dynamics. They're really looking for people who speak their language. The figures look good, you check out, timing works, they'll probably buy. We try to dig into the pain with these guys, and it's going to go off like a hand grenade, and they're just going to make polite excuses and hop off the call. Okay, they want to deal with professionals. who can speak the language of finances, industry. Okay, they're going to do their due diligence on you. They're not going to be pressured into adopting timeframes that don't work for them. Okay, so they need to be handled in a more laissez-faire attitude. Okay, so what product or service do you offer, and which personality distinctions do you attract? Okay, needy, willful, business type, or investor type. And so common, guys, to have different avatars coming through your funnels. But you're just going to say, wow, this is a business type. I'm going to sell them with this. This one's a needy type. I'm going to predominantly sell on this. This one's a willful type. I'm going to be selling like them. I'm going to be emphasizing on this. It's different conversations, more functional conversations, more meaningful conversations to the prospect, and they trust you, want to do business with you. It's also worth noting that some people are in the evolution phases, and they might be both. They might be needy and desire driven at the same time. But that doesn't mean that you don't pick one and sell because that's your gut sense. Well, these guys, these are the I really think these guys are, they're the really, feeling the flames on here. So I'm gonna sell them as according to a needy buyer. Okay, so we're going to revert back to those different buyer types in a minute, but this is a sensible sales process, which we're going to customize according to those buyer types. We open, rapport, agenda, that sort of thing. We find out about the situation, we identify the problem, what have they done about solving their problem, what do they want in a solution, okay, how would things be different in a logical sense if they solve their problem, what would things be different in an emotional sense if they solve their problem, can they do it on their own? What happens if they choose the wrong vendor or don't ever take action to solve their problem? We present them the solution. We find out if the solution has landed by committing questions, and then we ask for the order. Guys, a couple of different sales models all rolled into one there, and then stripped back. If you do this, guys, you won't need another sales process. So I've literally coached every industry, I should imagine, apart from selling things like nuclear submarines and aeroplanes and things like that. But in this room, I would say I've coached everybody's offer. And this, if you just use this, don't need all the bells and whistles. This is your framework. All right. So needy types: fitness, dating, personal development, car sales, insurance. Okay. So what am I saying here? Reds mean you really want to sell them on it, and oranges mean that they are important, but it's not the do or die that these prospect needs to be sold on. So needy buyers, we want to find out the situation. We want to take them down into the depths with their problem. We want to take them to the heights of the solution, and then we want to present them what they said they wanted. And then the ambers, the logical change that will happen if they solve their problem, getting them to say they can't do it on their own, and the consequence of, those are important. But what I'm trying to say is, like, for this type of buyer, the needy buyer, the feet against their flames, we really nail down in the problem and what life would be like if they solved it, and give them exactly what they said they wanted. Okay, willful types: business coaching, sales coaching, business opportunities to scale wealth, car sales again, home improvement, less pain, more solution focused. Okay, so we find out the situation. If the problem's on the table, we take it. What are they looking for? If we'll take it, but we sell them on what the life would look like to solving their problem logically and possibly emotionally as well if it's on the table. And if we can close the loop on them, i.e., what are the chances of you getting it done on your own? If we can do that, we will. And obviously presentation. All right. So if it's a willful buyer, we sell them on the change. Business types, done for yous, business upgrades, business scaling, B2B in general. We really want to be selling them on the current situation metrics and the future situation metrics, and ask ourselves, are we the guys that can provide the most value? So what does that look like? We find about the situation, okay, and the logical change, and then we present it back to them. So the variables that are really important on a business sale, like what are the variables that they have in terms of time, money, revenue, churn, whatever it is, and how can we and what do they want to get it to for their business goals? And then when we sell it back to them, that's the gap we sell. It's more tangible. Investor types, M&A, property development, done for you business opportunities. Okay, so they know how to generate their income. We want to find out how they generate their income. Time is likely to be the thing holding them back. You know, they want to be able to make money without the limitations in their current life. Okay, so it's a simpler sale. It's going to be we're going to be focusing more on the peripheries like trust, knowing the industry avatars, knowing the verbiage, doing our research. But we sell on the situation, and we sell on the logical change that will occur, and we present to them. If the problem's on the table, we take it, but we don't if we don't sell on the problem. We don't sell on the dream. We're very logical, and we're selling on trust. So can you see here, if you tried a needy process where you're taking somebody into the pain and taking them to the promised land on an investment type, like it's just not going to work. Okay, guys, so bear with me here. This is beautiful mind stuff all kicking off. So as you can see now, this is the hallmarks of a very comprehensive sales process. We've gone through, we've assessed our prospect. We can almost say on a scale of 1 to 5. A 5, they're ready to buy, they're our ideal candidate. Or even a scale of 1 to 7, they're our ideal candidate, they're qualified, they've known us, they're ready, and they've got brand awareness, all that good stuff, fully qualified. Then we're going to run the discovery with them, like a 2 or a 1, like they've got red flags all over them, and then we can decide whether we want to say they're not qualified, put them into long-term nurture, put them into a short-term nurture cycle before we run in, or we could even two-step them, what Todd was alluding to there. Somebody who's maybe a 5 out of 7, they know that they need an awning, they know summer's coming, they've got a sense of urgency, they're financially qualified, they fit, with a really distinct avatar type, but they just don't know if we're the right guys for the job. And Todd's thinking to himself, I really want this deal. These guys are going to get a real good service from us. I think I just need to let them digest this content about us before I go in for the kill. I just got the 6th sense that we talked about. All right. And so this is going to lead to you having a very, very robust script, which is going to save you a lot of time because you're not speaking to people who aren't ready to do business with you. And just a spoiler, I am offering a DIY solution where I'll be offering this script with all this magical sauce all behind the scenes. All right. So how do you sell using a framework rather than a script? So now we understand our prospect, and we have a sensible process to take them through. Then we identify the specific outcomes that need to happen each stage of that discovery. Remember I talked about like the bulletproof sales process? Each of those phases can have certain outcomes. And instead of being tied to a dogmatic script, do you like, how long have you been? Okay, what we can do now is ask ourselves, like, in order for me to actually make sure that I've covered all the points of that script, but I can just have a conversation. Okay, and you do that, guys, and you're speaking to the right people, and it's default, and they're qualified. You know who they are as an avatar. You're asking great questions, and then you are checkboxing all of the different things needed for the phase to be correctly done. And by default, you will just be having great conversations, and people will close. So what could that look like? In the opening phase, gauge personality or mood, gauge reciprocity, gauge awareness, set the agenda, set frame. Okay, have I done those things? But you have a mutual conversation. Yeah, I've done all those things. Great. Okay, let's get into the situation. Okay, and so now instead of you being tied to the script, this would be something you could put on your tape player, like on your MP3 or whatever, and you're thinking, and then instead of you just learning a script of parrot fashion words, you can have this on your desk, and then you can be just glancing down at it, and it's just like, oh yeah, I just need to do that. But now you're focusing on the prospect, and you're focusing on a prospect that is qualified and needs what you want and knows who you are sufficiently to have a functional conversation with. Okay, so to conclude in this webinar, we talked about the 6 variables to understand your prospect, your prospect assessment, the 6 qualification criteria, the 4 different types of buyers, sensible sales process, and how to customize it for each buyer type, the live case study, how to pull it all together, and how to sell using a framework rather than a script. Okay, so my aim was to demonstrate that a prospect is a very unique entity who deserves to be understood to a deep level. The reward for taking the time to understand your prospect will yield far more flowing, productive, and mutually beneficial sales calls that can't help to have a better outcome. Okay, guys, so what could the future look like? Obviously, like I'm a sales coach. I know about you guys. I don't think anybody wouldn't know that here. So I work with sales pros ranging from skill, mindset, well-being, process optimization, such as this. I'm getting some amazing results with guys with this at the moment. I do have a DIY solution, which will help you to install the system we've just talked about today. And there's a digital course which shows you how to do it, deep level scripting and Telegram access to me. I also work with a small number of clients in a one-to-one setting. Okay, I'm very much detailed on success focused because I only work with a small number of clients. Okay, if you did work with me, it would be a very thorough thing whereby it's project managed, hitting clearly established tangible goals, weekly face-to-face, unlimited WhatsApp contact, call reviews, life access to a digital training product. DIY option, guys, is 1,500 for webinar attendees. The rate for my one-to-one coaching is 1,500 for 4 weeks. Okay, if that's of interest to you, let me know. Okay, we can have a further conversation. Okay, just to let you know, testimonials. This guy on the left, he's been doing my coaching and it's literally night and day. And I can honestly say this guy's a fit pro. Once we finish working together, the only way those prospects who are qualified will be hopping off the call with him, will be pressing the big red button, because what I'm doing is crushing. This guy is in sales, managed to double his revenue this month. And these people here are testimonies. Mark, I think, might be on this call. He's a VP of sales now. Laura's a coach in her own right. Everybody there, guys, who's coached me in the past, they've gone on to bigger and better things.